Warm greetings from the high 10. It is Everyday Shenanigans. Happy holidays to everybody and happy Tuesday. We're going to take a deep dive into the Idaho student slangs. We're going to start off with Dr. Phil. He has done a segment on this diabolical crime out of Idaho. I'm also going to be playing you other content, and most of it will be coming from News Nation. We're going to talk about the evidence of the bagging of the hands, another network has mentioned seeing a glove. We're going to go ahead and mention that as well. Was the crime scene thoroughly looked at on the outside perimeter? How far out did they search? And also, I've uploaded a video with a virtual tour of the house. Please check out that said commentary. It's about 20 minutes long, 20 plus minutes long. You will get to see the inside of the house, a virtual tour. And I did my best in trying to show you the inside. I don't make any claims on which rooms any of the victims were in because many people have speculated which rooms each victim was in, but I give you a virtual tour and you can use your discretion in watching that tour. So please check out that content. Please like that video because this is the first time you can really see the inside of the house and try to assess which entry did the killer go into. The front door, which had a keypad, second floor, which is on the back, glass slider, third floor slider, ground level with the slider, has also two windows, one on either side of the glass door. How did the perpetrator enter? So please check out that upload in my library queue. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Beganji, 129 Cash App. Sit back and enjoy the content. Thank you so very much for subscribing, watching. Dr. Phil, thank you.
Kaylee and Madison were stabbed to death in their house near the campus of the University of Idaho after a night of partying. Law enforcement says the two surviving roommates were asleep in their first floor bedrooms during the attack and didn't wake up until later that morning. Now, at this point, police are not sure if the attack was a target on the house or the students. Kaylee's father believes the killer did target his daughter and her friends coming in through the second floor sliding glass door. Now, either way, the families are demanding answers. But as of now, this whole thing remains a mystery.
There are plenty of questions and very few answers after 4 students at the University of Idaho were found murdered in their off-campus house. Authorities are calling it a crime of passion.
It is a complex and terrible crime. It's the chilling last photo of 4 University of Idaho students taken just hours before they were found murdered.
Police still have no suspect, weapon, or motive in the killings of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and his girlfriend, Xana Kernodle. What they have said from the start is this was a targeted attack, but have not concluded if the target was the residents or the occupants.
The mystery deepened when police revealed the shocking information that 2 other roommates were inside the house when the 4 students were slaughtered. Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, both 21.
Investigators believe a, quote, edged weapon, such as a knife, was used.
Autopsies on the 4 students found each had multiple stab wounds. Some had defensive wounds, showing they fought with the attacker. And there was no sexual assault.
The night began at around 10:30 p.m. when the friends took an Uber to a downtown bar. They left a little after 1 a.m., and that's when they stopped by the food truck. 1:56 a.m., the girls take an Uber home. They were stabbed to death between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., along with Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle.
A major development tonight in the murder of 4 college students in Idaho. Detectives want to speak to the driver of a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra with unknown license plate. They say the occupants of the car may have critical information regarding the case.
We want answers too, and this is really, really difficult for those investigators who are investigating this crime.
We're really mad that there is someone who is responsible for this. We know that there's someone who saw something and no one's talking. We're not getting any answers, and we're not going to settle for that.
Look, we want to break down the details of this case that has online sleuths and armchair detectives trying to understand what happened. Joining me is Joseph Scott Morgan, a distinguished scholar of forensics at Jacksonville State University and host of podcast Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI special agent, Navy SEAL, and author of the book Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. And criminologist and investigative profiler, Dr. Casey Jordan, who has been with us before. It's good to see you again. Dr. Casey, let me start with you.
Sure.
When you look at this, beyond the horrific nature of this crime, these 4 young people so tragically killed, is there anything that jumps out at you about it?
We have to consider that this is a town that's not had any homicides in 7 years. It's a university town, 26,000 people live there, but half, at least 13,000, are students.
Right.
So when you think about 4 people dying in one night with horrific slashings, okay, the stabbing of that knife shows a frenzy. So whoever went into that house, if it was targeted towards the human, which is what Kaylee's father believes, started with, in his words, the 2 girls, but then took the time to kill another couple. We don't know if the perpetrator went downstairs or was even aware that there were 2 unharmed people downstairs. So the idea that you have 6 people, it doesn't surprise me that the roommates slept through it, because I know how college kids are when they party on a Saturday night. But to go in and get out, take the knife with them, and leave no trace, because we're going to come up on a month very soon with no suspects. What stands out the most is that I would have guessed this was inner circle, somebody who knew these girls. I think Kaylee and Maddie were probably the targets if it was indeed targeted. And I would have thought that they would have a suspect by now, that they would have an arrest by now. And as time goes on, Dr. Phil, I am more and more convinced that this could be a random stranger, something like the Gainesville Ripper that we saw in Florida 30 years ago.
Right.
As time passes, the odds of that being true do increase.
Well, one of the things that most people don't know, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the statistics I look at from the FBI is that about 50% of the murders don't ever get solved. And people think, are you kidding me, with DNA and all of that? But is that still an accurate number?
Yeah, Dr. Phil, I'd say that it is.
I think a lot of that's because guns are used in 80% of murders now, but this was stabbing, and that means DNA is much more plentiful than if you used a gun from a distance. What jumps out at you about this?
I see a rage killing, and I see somebody that potentially could have started with Kaylee. That's probably why you would see deeper impacts or more ferocious types of knife stabbing wounds. And then as they go from person to person, that would decrease, because killing, which most people don't understand the reality of killing with a knife, is a very violent, it's a very physically exhausting and also adrenaline exhausting. And by the time you get to a 4th person, you're going to be very exhausted. I think when you look at the totality of the circumstances of this attack, what you see is somebody that I think we're all in agreement, somebody that probably lives, I put it within 3 hours, because if it happened at 3, the sun came up around 7, most likely an attacker would want to be home and would be satiated. This is also a lot about satiation. So the person was probably satiated, exhausted, and didn't want to be out after the sun came up.
Well, for sure, because they're going to be covered in blood, right?
I don't see how they couldn't be.
Yeah. Well, look,
Was the killer tired after killing 4 people? Did he have a job to go to that morning? It's a Sunday morning. Some people don't work on Sundays, depending on the type of career they have. Did the perpetrator have to go to work that day, that morning, second shift? And I agree, the person will be tired. We heard that with Theodore Bundy. After soliciting women, depending on how many kills he did a day, he was known to be very tired. That was said, I believe, by the girlfriend. He will be tired, exhausted. Of course you are. You're hunting people, trying to get them to get into your fold. Then once you get them, you're doing whatever you have to do to subdue them. Then, God forbid, you're taking them off to dump them, which there was no dumping here, but a person who's active in hunting and discarding of bodies, depending on how many people they're trying to kill in a day, you would be exhausted. So I agree. He would have been tired. So did he have a job to go to the next day? On that Sunday? Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. What type of work does he do? Did he live with somebody? And you hear that in his commentary. What did somebody notice about this character thereafter the killings? What was odd about his demeanor? Thank you for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans. And would he have been noticed had he not come in later in the day? Stay woke.
Look, as seen on Cable News Network, News Nation, reporter Brian Hinton explains the layout of the victim's house. Let's look at this so everybody knows what we're talking about.
Outside the murder scene here in Moscow, Idaho, still an active crime scene. You can see the crime scene tape is still up. Still a police officer guarding the house. This is the front of the house, which is what you normally see. But if we walk to the side, no windows or doors on the side. But back of the house, you see there's a balcony. There's a slider on the third level. On the second level, there is also a slider. And we actually have some slides with the layout, which kind of help explain it. It's 3 levels. First level has 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. There were no victims found on the first level. Second level has 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And the third level has 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And we know that the victims were found on the second and third level.
Okay, so this was not a particularly complex house, but it was on 3 levels. And if the entry was on the second level, or was actually the middle level, the ground level, and I think everybody is kind of assuming that that was the entry point.
It does make the most sense.
Yeah, it makes the most sense to come through that slider, which was ground level, so somebody could walk up and come through there. Coming up, eerie photos of inside the house where the murders took place. Now, one reporter's analysis plus the murder weapon, what the police are looking for when we come back. And I want to talk about this murder weapon, particularly with you, Jonathan, because you know a lot about this when we come back.
Kaylee Gonzalez's injuries were significantly more brutal than her best friend Maddie's injuries. If Kaylee's injuries were the most severe up on the 3rd floor, and there's no way out of the 3rd floor, would that mean the killer specifically targeted the 3rd floor? Because why would the killer go up to a floor where there would not be an easy exit for him?
Before now, we only knew they were found together, but we didn't know in Maddie's room or in Kaylee's room. And so as we look at the 3rd floor map right there, bedroom number E, or bedroom E, is Maddie's bedroom, and it looks out the back of the house, and bedroom F is Kaylee's bedroom, and it looks out the front, but also the back where the slider is.
That's right. We've confirmed that they were in Maddie's room. Which is also interesting. That's something that we did not know. So Kaylee's injuries were significantly more brutal, but they were sleeping together in Maddie's room.
Well, that was a report from Cable News Network, News Nation, describing where victims Kaylee and Madison bodies were found. Now, DailyMail.com has been covering the case since the beginning. And so joining us now is DailyMail.com senior reporter and our good friend, Caitlin Becker, who is...
If it's true that Kaylee had moved out of this house, allegedly gone for 2 weeks or so, do not know if that is true, then why would she have more substantial wounds than the other victims? Number 2, did her father see the bodies of the other victims to say that his daughter had more substantial wounds? Number 3, make sense of why this girl would have more wounds than any of the other victims if she had already moved out of the house. So you have to now say, was she being stalked and watched? Did she go live to show her locations for somebody to assume where she would be? It couldn't have been a random person watching a live to know where she would be, unless she had specified in a live feed where she lived before moving out. Stay woke. How would a random person know she was there? If she moved out, she also bought another car, you wouldn't know her car. Has she moved out? Stay woke. Pay attention to the details. So how would a random person know she was there if she was the target? Number 2, was this the inside job from the house? Somebody who lived in the house, visited the house, friends with any of the roommates? Because if she's the target and had moved out, why would she have more wounds than anybody else and she was not living there? How would the killer know she was there? Had they been watching the house beforehand and it was just happenstance they chose this night and she happened to be there in Maddie's room? Make it make sense. Thank you for joining me.
Has brought us exclusive pictures of inside the house. And Caitlin, you've been all over this, so let's get some details here and start by looking at the bedrooms where these victims were found. It's very likely that they came in the sliding door. And that's the one that you can walk up to, right? You just walk up on the grass.
So the back of the house is ground floor, is the second floor. And there's 2 possible points of entry there. There's a slider and a window, and there's a cinder block under a window, which are very close, and they're going into the kitchen.
Okay.
Now, Xana and her boyfriend, Ethan, were on the second floor there.
So this is the patio ground access where someone could walk up.
Yeah.
And this is a sliding door.
And there's a window near there, too.
And there's a window near there as well. And who was on this floor and in which bedroom?
So that was Xana and Ethan, and they were a couple, and I believe they were bedroom D.
Maddie and Kaylee were on the 3rd floor. They were in which bedroom?
So they were in bedroom E, which was Maddie's bedroom.
Okay,
Kaylee's bedroom was bedroom F, but Kaylee had moved out because she was graduating in December. So she was just back visiting for the weekend, had brought her dog with her, and her best friend from growing up was her roommate, Maddie. So they were sleeping in the same bed in room E, Maddie's room.
Then the 3rd couple was in the basement on the 1st floor.
Mm-hmm. The roommates. Yeah, the 2 roommates. And so there were 2 empty bedrooms in the house.
Okay. The whole point is these guys say they didn't hear anything at all. And if they'd been out partying and were zonked out and all, did it seem like that's possible that they could not hear anything?
It's certainly possible that they couldn't have heard anything. And we've also heard from other people who were living in the house in years prior who had rented it before these girls did, saying that he was on the lowest floor, and unless someone was playing a television extremely loud on the 2nd floor, extremely loud on the 3rd floor, they really wouldn't. Please
go to my video that I uploaded a little while ago, giving you a virtual tour of the house. When you look at the way it's set up, there are open stairs separating the 1st to the 2nd, 2nd to the 3rd. There's no way you can tell me you can't hear any noise from the 1st floor to the 2nd. Please check out that video because this was an open house. Maybe you can't hear what's going on the 3rd floor from the 1st. There's no way you can tell me you can't hear anything on the 2nd floor because it's an open house. The door sits in the middle. The stair landing is to the left. You walk up those stairs. You should know that things are going to echo because it's open. It's all open. Stay woke. Where all the people sleep in the house at the time of the murders? Maddie, Kaylee, were they up, talking, laughing, watching TV, music? What? Ethan, Xana, 2nd floor, were they up? Did any of these people talk or cross paths before they went to bed? Did anybody go knock on anybody's door to chit-chat, check on them, see if they were okay? Because if they came in 10, 11 minutes apart from each other, which is being reported, 1:45 for the couple, 1:56 for the girls, it's only 11 minutes. Stay woke. Did any of the couples talk to each other, have a drink, last-minute drink, sit in the living quarters to talk? Pay attention to the details. It's being reported that Kaylee was on the phone up until about 2:52, so that means she was awake. What time was the first killing? Who was the first through the fourth? Did the kids talk to each other before they went to their separate rooms? Thank you for joining me. And where is the weapon? Was it disposed nearby, such as the dumpster across the street from the house? Stay woke. I have photographs showing you the house, the apartment building across the street, which is the back of the apartment building. There's a blue dumpster to sit there. What did he do with his clothes, shoes, weapon? He was bloody. Did he take a bag with him? Did he wash up there? Did he leave DNA behind, washing up, cleaning up? Did he take a shower? Pay attention to the details. Thank you for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans.
Really wouldn't have heard anything. As you can see, the house is laid out kind of funky, so I don't know what the acoustics are like. You also have to figure this is a house with a bunch of roommates in college, so a little noise is probably kind of normal. So maybe you hear walking around, it doesn't wake them up because they're kind of used to it.
Yeah. Did you notice anything odd with the pictures from inside? Did you notice anything odd with the pictures from inside the house?
So the photos that we obtained at Daily Mail of inside the house are taken of that second floor. So you can kind of see into the common area here. You have the tamper tape on the wall, on the door where it's opening and you're looking inside. We've got solo cups. There's a place for beer pong to be set up. There's a ton of dirty dishes, a half-drank cup of iced coffee. Everything looked pretty normal. You don't see blood, you don't see anything turned upside down. It looked like a mess left from a bunch of kids before they went out for the night. But what you did see in that one photo that cycled through was the outside of the house, and that was below Xana and Ethan's room. And that is what looked like blood dripping through the foundation.
Okay. So if that's true, that's a lot of blood to actually seep through.
Yes.
And you would have to assume they were on the floor, because if they were on the bed, I would guess it would get soaked up by the bed, right?
Right. Now, this knife that was used is kind of a cliche among young people. This is a Rambo knife.
Right.
And so this is something that you see in video games. It's something you see in movies because it's a very macho looking knife. So
it's also in shadow boxes and sold. It's one of the cheaper end knives, so you don't have to be, a lot of these knives are $200 or more for a really top quality knife. This is a cheaper knife.
Yeah.
So somebody that doesn't have a big bank account would probably order this. Would also lead me to believe it's a younger individual. Somebody just doesn't have a lot of money.
A real professional would not use that knife.
So we're issued a K-bar knife. Or I don't know about currently, but when I was in, we were issued that knife. And when everybody got out of training,
Dr. Phil, what do you consider a professional? A professional killer? A knife's a knife. Does it matter? Just saying, it doesn't matter about the knife. 4 people are dead. We don't know if this is a seasoned killer, has killed before, or 2, somebody was just angry at 1 or more of the people in the house, already had a knife or bought the knife. So let's ask that. Was this a new purchase just for this occasion, or the perpetrator already had the weapon? And where is the weapon? Did he cut himself? Did the perpetrator cut himself? Is somebody now walking around with wounds to their hand, arms, wrists?
Everybody in my platoon immediately went and bought other kinds of knives because it's a thick knife. It doesn't hold an edge well, and the tip is prone to breaking off.
And there's also a guard in a frenzied attack. That's very likely.
Very important information here. The tip is known to break off of this knife that he's describing. Do not know if this is the exact type of knife that the perpetrator used, but nonetheless, if the knife does not have substantial weight, the blade, it will break off due to the fact you're using a lot of force into the human flesh. So did the tip or part of the blade or most of the blade break off in one of the victims? Will they release that information if indeed someone was found with a blade still inside of their body? Very interesting information.
To injure the one doing the stabbing.
Sure.
It was in a frenzied knife, which is likely to leave DNA from that individual.
Correct. And again, when you're using that on 4 individuals, let's not look at them as people. Let's look at them as the objects that were being bluntly hit with this knife. You're talking about bone, cartilage, things that will dull a knife very quickly.
Very true.
So you would probably see a progression of smaller and smaller wounds, or not as deep, or the penetration just wouldn't be as good, and it would become a more physical attack from the very first start.
Well, one thing Jonathan and I had spoken about relative to this type of knife, guess what it comes with? It comes with a sheath. And everybody's saying, we don't know, the knife isn't there. I think my question is, did he drop the sheath at the scene? Was that left behind? Do they have that clue to go on?
But in terms of looking at this from forensic standpoint, we do know if 4 people are stabbed in rapid succession, the one that's stabbed first is going to have the most wounds and the deeper wounds.
Yes.
And we know that you'll know that that's the person stabbed first because they won't have.
Who was stabbed first? Who was stabbed first? The girls on the top or the couple on the second floor? And naturally, they're going to leave a trail. So that should be proven by now which way he entered and which way he left out. First person stabbed will not have DNA of the other victims mixed in with their blood. So who's the first person stabbed and who has the most DNA in their blood? Naturally, the other 3 would after the first stabbing. Victim number 1 would not have anybody else's blood from that scene mixed in with their DNA. So who was the first one stabbed? And naturally, after that, it will be a mixture of all the victims if he used the same knife. Number 2, did he use an alternate weapon or knife? Thank you for joining me.
Have any of the other 3's DNA on them.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Phil. So there will be the least amount of transfer DNA from that individual. Just imagine we've got A, B, C, and D. So for the first victim, once they are stabbed, and as Jonathan pointed out, it would be you would have significance there because the individual would still be full of vim and vigor at that point. But from a DNA perspective, as you move to victim B, you're taking DNA from A and then essentially inoculating that individual with A's DNA and so forth and so on until by the time you get to D, there is a high probability that you're going to have this succession all the way along where they will contain DNA perhaps of everybody involved in this case and potentially the perpetrator as well.
Coming up, there are 4 hours missing for victims, Xana and Ethan's timeline. Where did they go? And not that they are suspected of doing anything they shouldn't have been doing, but are we missing any crucial information? Plus, what type of person would do something like this? We're going to talk about the profile of this kind of killer. We'll be right back.
Dozens of websites and postings from armchair detectives are springing up.
We're not getting any answers, and we're not going to settle for that.
It was Olivia who found the potentially crucial video of her sister and Madison Mogan at a food truck just hours before they were murdered. She also tracked down their Uber driver.
I found neighbors' ring camera footage so that I can verify that the Uber driver took her home.
Gosh, I give you a lot of credit. You're almost like a detective here, putting all the pieces together.
Very crucial information. That's what puts the girls at the house at 156, allegedly a doorbell camera from a neighbor. But this is dangerous mentioning this information because the killer is still out there. And you don't think the killer won't try to figure out who has the footage of the girls going in and out. Use common sense. Which neighbor has the footage? What is their proximity to the house? Do you not think the killer would not try to figure out which house it is? Because someone has foolishly put someone's address out there saying that they had a camera on their property. I do not know the proximity of that house, but whoever did that, you were wrong and foul and vile for putting out someone's address saying they had a camera. So what? That's their private right. Nobody has the right to put their name or address out on social media, because you seem to forget there's a killer loose and he's watching and listening to everything. So now he knows that somebody has a doorbell camera that shows the girls in a ride share going home. You people are ignorant. You're just ignorant as hell. You have no respect for the investigation, the victims, future victims, the privacy of other people, and you're putting other people's lives in danger. And his sister apparently thinks she's trying to help by giving out this information, but you have now told the killer that one of the neighbors has a doorbell camera. Now you see why the police don't want to reveal any information. Because in revealing certain things, you're telling the killer what you know. You're telling the killer what he didn't pay attention to, and you're also endangering the lives of innocent civilians. Lord have mercy. It's ridiculous. Thank you for joining me.
Quadruple murder in the small college town of Moscow, Idaho is a mystery that has captivated the nation. It's been weeks since the bodies of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan have been found stabbed to death in their off-campus house. And as more days go by with no answers, experts say the more likely it is going to become a cold case. Now, as seen on cable news network News Nation, the victims' families speak out about their frustrations and not getting many answers from the police.
The family wondered if law enforcement cleared some people too early and why the police haven't privately disclosed their alibis to the families of the victims.
I just feel like there have been a couple individuals that were cleared very fast.
It makes sense if there was some bad behavior that they did. Let's say they came from a strip club or something, and then if somebody followed them home. That's a targeted thing. That's what I've had innocent people that were interviewed that were their neighbors, and they said, I'd be a lot more scared if it wasn't targeted.
The mother of Xana Kernodle shared her thoughts with News Nation's Ashley Banfield.
I do not think it was the house that was targeted. I believe wholeheartedly that it was those kids who were targeted. They weren't just acquaintances. These kids were like best friends. They did everything together. How could it not be a planned thing? How could it not have been targeted?
The family was saying they think they're maybe clearing some people too quickly here. What do you think about that?
All right. Statistically, we're going to look at what we call the inner circle of their friends, people, acquaintances who might have had a vendetta, a beef, a disagreement that could explain what the mayor called a crime of passion. We see this with a lot of exes, ex-boyfriends, people that they've had falling outs with on social media. But what you do is find that one person is targeted. You don't see them continue with everyone else in the house. So that's what is really unusual from a criminological standpoint. When you think about the fact that one person might have been targeted and they decided to kill everyone else in the house and there was no sexual assault, to me that's extremely interesting. The stabbing motion we typically see in forensic psychology is what we call piquerism. It's a substitute for sexual action when you can't sexually perform. So that has raised some theories that it could be.
Great point. I mentioned this in my commentary before. Is it an issue that possibly the perpetrator cannot perform sexually? And that's why there was no sexual assault, because we do not know the perpetrator. We do not know the motive. Inner circle, outer circle, random, target, which is so ever. Was it targeted? Was it random? Knows the victims. Been inside of the house, been invited, given a key. Did the people give the passcode to somebody? Was he invited over that night? Did somebody bring him home with them? And he decided to play funny games with the victims. So many possibilities. But great point mentioned here. Is the perpetrator a non-functioning male downstairs? Cannot perform, can't get it up, can't get an erection, angry, mad at the world, this new incel terminology that everyone's using. You're entitled to your opinion. Mad at these type of females, not the type that will be attracted to him, so he thinks. But then that's the whole point. You don't know who somebody can and will be attracted to, because we see a lot of attractive women with guys that we would think, oh, I can't believe she's dating him. He doesn't look like her type. Same thing with a guy. You see a very handsome guy with a female that you didn't think would be his type, because that's the assumption. What is someone's type? You don't know because you don't know the person. Sometimes people do date people for their personality, not their outside appearance. And once again, is this a non-functioning male? Angry, he cannot perform. Target the girls because they're pretty, attractive. Didn't think they would be his type. Do not know, because we do not know the perpetrator. And frankly, we do not know these victims, because not much has been revealed about their personalities. And as I've told you in my commentary, in order to find the killer, you need to assess who the victims were. Thank you for joining me.
It could be an incel, somebody who's an involuntary celibate, who has issues with what Elliot Rodgers once called Stacy's, those beautiful blonde sorority sister types, because they feel like they're unobtainable.
Well, Kaylee had made comments about a stalker before her death.
I've got to tell you, young ladies, I've been teaching college for 35 years. If they've got a stalker, they tell everyone. They tell their friends. They might not tell their family because they don't want daddy to worry. But they're not stupid. They want their friends to walk with them to bars. I think that if the stalker theory were real, we would have a lot more information on that.
Was the stalker valid, real? Was she just exaggerating? Maybe came in contact with a male, Mrs. Kaylee, and he acted a bit peculiar, but it wasn't to the degree of notes, letters, following her home, blocking her in or out of a car, sitting outside of the house, standing outside of the house, creeping around the house, banging on doors, leaving letters, notes, gifts. The real type of stalking, where they are not just sending messages through Messenger, WhatsApp, TikTok, so on and so forth, but they are in your peripheral. They are going by your house, knocking by your house. You're bumping into them at every corner, store, school. A stalker. He has made himself visual a lot of times. What's the truth? And as this lady says here, she would have told a lot of people. You have not heard anybody else mention except for the father. It has not been verified by law enforcement, as they have said. Could have just been a passing fluke with a male. Thank you for joining me. And the two men that they're speaking of in that business incident, those have been cleared as well. Do you think they should be telling the family who they've cleared and the alibis? No, they should not, because what if they decided to confront those people? Then you have an all-out war of people fighting and fussing with each other. That would be very dangerous. And naturally, they can go back and investigate a person at any time. Clear does not mean they don't have any involvement. And the police does not have to tell you, actually, if they have cleared the person. Stay woke.
People would have a specific person in mind, and that would be a person of interest by now.
Yeah. If this was someone that was attracted to one or both of Kaylee and Maddie, why go to the other couple?
The person that did this was somebody who is satiated by the killing. I think that's the main thing, because of the fact that it continued. And I think what we probably would see is an escalated behavior. So this is somebody who I can guarantee in the community in which they live, there's people who know this individual as odd, somebody who has a violent past, or somebody they've dated or in their family who's shown a propensity for violence and has increased. Because of the way this was carried out, I just don't believe that this is the first time this person is killed.
You see, 50% of this town's population are not from that town.
Right.
They're from, they've come in to attend that university. And look, I work with law enforcement on these things, and we've talked a lot about the profile of these killers, not a lot about serial stabbing killers, because there aren't a lot of those to profile.
There's not, and I have to tell you, Dr. Phil, before I was a college professor, I worked for the coroner in Metro New Orleans, and I was a senior investigator with the EME in Atlanta. Can I tell you right now that in my entire career as a practitioner, I don't ever recall a case where I had a multiple stab wound of 4 victims. I had a couple where I'd had 2, but where people were specifically stabbed in one location, they were kind of corralled in these bedrooms, these intimate spaces like this with such violence. I've never encountered this as a practitioner.
And no vehicle that has come up on any cameras as suspicious would lead me to believe that the person is probably from that location.
All right, coming up, there's a report of a dog stolen and skinned.
Well, you do know that a vehicle has been introduced into the storyline. White 4-door Elantra occupants. Did somebody see several people in the car? What was it doing for somebody to say something about the car and bring it in as a tip? How many people called in about this car? What is the proximity of the car to the crime scene? Next door, into the driveway, what? Across the street with a dumpster sat? Mentioning of a black SUV. Where was it parked? You don't hear anything about that from law officials, so maybe it's nothing. And as I said, a lot of people are meddling in this case and putting out stuff that is not true and not accurate. And it hurts the investigation because you will have sickos and wackos calling the police and the FBI with tips that is from gossip, not factual information. And you have to have respect for the people taking the information down. You're overloading the phone lines with gossip and rhetoric. And that is hurting the investigation. Some of you don't seem to understand that. This is real. These are 4 dead people. Do not call in tips from gossip. Because I got a funky feeling majority of the tips called in are probably from gossip. From Facebook and social media sites such as YouTube. And people just meddling. They can't solve a crime that way. Because the resources they use on trying to pan out those gossip tips, they got to wait to get around to a tip that may be actually factual. It's very sick.
3 miles away from the victim's house, just a few weeks prior to the student's murder. Are they connected anyway? I'm not a big one for coincidence. I just got to tell you, I'm just not a big one for coincidence.
Well, they say there's no coincidence in true crime.
Was this somebody warming up to this sort of thing? We'll talk about that next.
So many people are fearful over these 4 brutal homicides that many students have left campus and returned home, leaving Moscow, Idaho, a virtual ghost town.
Living next to the crime scene, it feels very dark. Like there's like kind of a spirit of death around of it.
They keep saying it's an isolated incident, but if we don't have an idea of who it is, nobody knows what to look out for. No one knows how to keep it.
Exactly.
This mass exodus from Moscow, because of people not feeling safe there, would allow this killer to leave in plain sight and not stick out as somebody all of a sudden he's there, then there's his murder, then he's not, and could possibly be long gone and therefore much harder to locate, much harder to find. We don't know. And I want to talk a little bit about what kind of person, what kind of mentality, what kind of maladaptive emotionality it takes to do something like this. You're talking about a real psychopath here. You're talking about someone that lacks empathy. You're talking about someone that's probably very narcissistic. And there's something called the dark triad. And the dark triad is something that kind of goes beyond the diagnostic categories. It's 3 traits or characteristics that we've identified: psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. And these are 3 characteristics that, when they occur together, it's the perfect storm for evil. It's the perfect storm for people that will kill someone for sport. They will kill someone where they get that feeling, that satiation, that high from doing it, and they can go into a frenzy, which is why they would go to the next bedroom and kill somebody else until they got to the point of exhaustion or fatigue.
Very interesting.
Or something scared them away. But there's something else about these people. They also are the kind of people that are likely to show up at a memorial service.
Yes, exactly.
They'll show up at a funeral. If these people do show back up, they're very likely going to be in the front 20% of the crowd, because the narcissism is going to put them in front where they can see everything, because they think this whole show is for them. The narcissism is going to push them to the front of the crowd, and they're going to be up there because they want to have the full show. So it's really worth getting a good record of who's there in that crowd, and they're very likely to try to take some kind of trophy with them.
Yes, I also mentioned that. Exactly.
Help themselves.
Exactly.
Now, 3 weeks before this happened, on October 21st, reports say a woman.
Could this be somebody that just wanted to see if they could get away with a crime? This dark triad that Dr. Phil is speaking of. I have mentioned that before about a trophy. Why would the person not want to take a trophy? You're going from room to room. Once again, you don't know who the perpetrator is. You're assuming you know who he is. Most of you are assuming only from gossip, because as I told you, if there was no Grubhub video, you wouldn't have that to go on to assume that certain person. Stay woke. Could this be a person wanting to exert their godlike complex? Many of you probably never heard of that before. That's where this Machiavellianism comes in. Let me see if I can do this. Is this a first-time killer trying his hands at something new? And as he said here, Dr. Phil, just went room to room because I could. Because that's the thing you don't understand about narcissism. It's its own entity. Its own mechanism inside the brain of the person. And you'd be surprised what narcissism would lead people to do. So he didn't necessarily have to know them. It's our assertion, perhaps some of us, that they knew the victims. One had more wounds, so it means they were targeted, blah, blah, blah. But who's to say this isn't just a random bloke? Saw some people coming and going a few times and just said, okay, I'm going to go to this house this time. Let me see how I can get in. And oops, made my way in, because some of you forget that a lot of people are random targets for robbery, breakery, sadism, sexual assault. They don't know the victim, never met him before, just saw him one day and decided to follow them, watch, and then made their move. Is this that type of situation? Because there are many sadists out here, robbers, thieves, and they did not know their victim. So maybe that's where all this house target mess has been coming from. Just somebody to play funny games with.
Woman let her 12-year-old mini Australian Shepherd out to use the bathroom, but he didn't come back. And they found him skinned 3 miles away from the murder house. And it had to be done by somebody that knew how to do it. Now, police have already said the incident is unrelated to the murders. I don't know how they know that, but I have a really hard time just giving that the back of my hand. How many dogs had they found skinned in Moscow, Idaho in the last forever?
Very true.
And from what I can understand, none.
No killings in 7 years, a skinned dog. How do you skin a dog unless you know how to skin an animal? Is this a hunter? Somebody that has skinned animals, fish, etc. Why did they skin the dog? For funny games. Because I could. Was he sending us a clue Then if the two are connected, let's say they are connected, what's the killer? Yes, a soundbite. This is what I'm about to show you I'm made of. I'm going to skin this dog. And then you have to ask yourself, if the dog was left there skinned, then who stood there and skinned the dog? I couldn't understand that, because I refuse to believe somebody stood on somebody's property and skinned the dog. Now, I don't know how long it takes to skin a dog, a small dog, but still, nonetheless, it still would take time, I would think. Now, we've got us I don't know how to word this, a timed skinner, then have mercy on us. And then leave the dog there to let you know I skinned the dog. Stay woke. Because who does that? How did they get the dog? Number one, did they watch the dog leave the house out for a poop run, picked up the dog, knowing many people have doorbell cameras, that this is a residential house situation? See, this one, this is how you know that the person is a narcissist, as you hear in this Machiavellianism thought process. I don't give a damn about the cameras. I don't give a damn about a doorbell camera. Kind of like I don't give a damn about going up in his house, knowing somebody's probably got a camera to see me go up in here on foot, however, skateboard, bicycle. So what? 5 cars in the driveway. So what? Latch on doors. I don't care. Pull off a screen. Sure will. Oops. Door open. I ain't got to break in. Stay woke. See, you don't know people. That's why you don't give a sadist a reason to use you as a victim. You don't leave the windows open. You don't leave the doors unlocked. You start having troubles with your locks, get them fixed. Because that would be the opportunity that the killer would come in, or the sadist, while you're waiting and stumbling around to fix a lock, fix a door, fix a window. I made sure to have my window fixed recently. And just the thought of going to sleep without a window repaired scared the jeepers out of me because of this case. Because that's all the perpetrator needs, is that one opportunity to come in while you're waiting for somebody to come repair the damn window. As someone said to me recently, oh, ain't nobody going to come in here. You're right on Front Street. You can see everything where you live. Come again? Oh, but they would come around to your other door where can't nobody see. Oh, well, thank you for telling me that. Like I don't know that. Never say what a perpetrator won't do. It doesn't matter if my home faces a street or not, close to a road. The point is, it's easy access. Because it is close to the street. And if nobody's up and there's no traffic, I understand what the person is saying. Your home is in wide view of people passing and going on an open road, but will the road be accessible at the time that the perpetrator will want to enter in my home? That's the point. And if this person is like this person, they don't care. They don't care. Because many people's homes that have been broken into, and apartments, condos, you know damn well the windows faced somebody else's window or door. Checkmate.
And then 3 weeks before a quadruple stabbing, within 3 miles, they find a dog stolen and skinned. I have a hard time writing that off.
This was one of our exclusive stories at dailymail.com, and I wanted to point out, as you just noted, taking something from a funeral or a memorial, the pelt of the dog was not found with the corpse. The paws and the head were left, the body was skinned, and the pelt is missing.
To me, it's significant that happened almost exactly 1 month before the slaying of the students. Many people have conjectured, could this person have done it before? Will he do it again? But very often we do see serialists start with animals. I mean, animal torture, everyone knows.
Everybody knows that, yes.
Common. And with serial killers, there's almost always a 30-day cooling off period before they do their next killing. So maybe the first victim was the dog, and then the person graduated onto the students.
Yeah,
very good.
To me, I would be very...
Police say the dog is not related. Of course, everybody that people have been mentioning and throwing out there aren't related, but the police don't have to tell you the truth. Was the dog the first kill? If we want to say that these two are connected, the skin dog and the Idaho 4. And actually, the police is not going to tell you, yeah, we believe he killed the dog, because then everybody would lose their damn mind, scared to let the dogs go out for a pee-pee and poo-poo run. And you'd be afraid to walk your dog. Stay woke. Oh my God, I'm a dog owner. I don't want to be out there walking my dog and there's somebody out there skinning dogs. Well, guess what? As it has been known in serial killer land, animals are the first that they start with. Got to have a dry run. Something easy to assess to hurt. You can find a cat or dog anywhere, because you all love to let your animals run out unattended and don't have your dogs on a leash. Yeah, I'm talking to you dog owners, because many of you do it, and you know you do it. You let your animals run out, use the bathroom to come back in. Now imagine sending your dog out there and your dog never comes back. And then you decide to get up. Oh, it's sure taking him a long time to use the bathroom. Yeah, because he's dead. Somebody decided to play funny games with your small dog. You have to be aware. And you see how people take everything for granted, such as letting a dog run out to play or use the restroom. Well, one dog didn't return. 4 kids went out for the evening. They never came back out of that house. It's the same thing.
Be very slow to erase that from the timeline.
No.
Now, the 911 call, what was said and what was not, it could be very revealing when we come back.
Was it a serial killer or someone they knew?
You could have somebody who is a potential serial killer who has been thinking about doing something like this for a very long time. If the fantasy was fulfilled, then the fantasy will grow even larger. And very often you're going to find a perpetrator who feels compelled to do it again.
Was it a serial killer or someone the victims knew? Investigators have taken about 4,000 photographs, collected 113 pieces of evidence, and more than 260 tips have been submitted to the FBI. Now, 4 weeks later, this quadruple murder still remains a mystery. Now, cyber sleuths have flooded social media with theories about the case. Now, joining us virtually is independent true crime aficionado Lisa Marie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
You said that you spoke to someone who was at the party with Xana and Ethan. What did you discover in talking with them?
So this person wanted to remain anonymous, but they were at the party with Xana and Ethan that night. And what they told me is that Ethan had words with a person who is in the frat, and that it got heated, and that at some point Xana kind of pulled him away. And of course, we have the gap in the missing timeline. So where did they go after that, of course? But yeah, apparently he did have words with somebody. This is what we're hearing. This is rumors at this point. But he did say there were words heated words, a heated exchange between him and another guy.
And Caitlin, the 911 call focused on an unconscious person. Well, what do we know about the call?
As far as I'm concerned, the biggest mystery in this entire, all the evidence that we have so far from our perspective is this 911 call. The series of events around it are very, very bizarre. The 911 call happened a little before noon on Sunday. It was made from one of the surviving roommates' phones, but cops were very specific in not saying that it was one of the surviving roommates who made the call. It was made from their phone. There were several people in the house at that time. From what we understand from our reporting, the roommates woke up. They tried to get a hold of Xana and Ethan through texts and calls. They couldn't. They called some friends to come over out of concern. Xana and Ethan, they're not waking up. We think they might be unconscious. We don't know what's going on. Friends come over. A 911 call gets made. What happens around the actual call when it's being made? There's a lot of speculation online about what exactly went down and why the call was for an unconscious person and not victims of a brutal stabbing.
How would they say unconscious if they didn't try to arouse them? And if they tried to arouse them, how would they not see blood from a double stabbing of this couple?
It's copious amounts of blood are going to be at the scene. You would have noticed it. This individual that perpetrated this crime is going to be super saturated in blood. So there would have been a trail, perhaps leading out of the bedroom, up the staircase,
Exactly.
back down.
Exactly.
Whatever their points of egress were to get out of this place, you're going to have blood droplets everywhere. I would probably suspect you might even have bloody footprints, maybe contact areas on the wall, because they will just be covered in blood, even if they're wearing gloves.
I find it very interesting that all these weeks, there's still no verification through a news source of what the 911 call was about. Somebody comes to the aid of these girls to say, well, this is how it happened. They did see him, Ethan, laying upstairs, somewhere up there on second floor, bloodied or whatever, but then run out. One passes out, one tries to call, she can't, and allegedly people are walking by trying to aid help. What's interesting about this story is we're now 4 weeks into the story, but yet none of the girls or anybody has verified it to a news source to clear up the misunderstanding. So it doesn't help me to have an anonymous person go to social media to say, hey, let me tell you what allegedly happened. I don't want to hear from a source. I want to hear from the people who made the damn 911 call. You can go to the news and give your commentary of what happened about the 911 call without showing yourself. So why should I believe this source that's friends with the surviving roommates? Because it seems like to me you'd want to clear that up as so people wouldn't be pointing fingers at you to have something to do with the crime since you are the two survivors. I would have let that come out point blank because I would not want that hanging over my head and have people thinking I had something to do with the crime. I would have cleared that up day one when I started hearing rumors about, as they're describing here, unconscious versus bloody. I'd have that cleared up. Hey, here's what happened. Here's what I saw. I don't have to show my face to get that information out there. And I think it's interesting. We're 4 weeks in. They're now on the Dr. Phil show. And the alleged version of how they found the body and ran out and other people got involved. Why has that not been verified by the people who actually did the visual of seeing the dead guy up there? Because I questioned that day one. How could you see somebody lying down and not know that they're bloody? Why would you be trying to wake somebody up? Were you waking them up on the floor or waking them up trying to bang on their door in their room? See, it never made sense. And then we have this mystery source that wants to defend the girls. But really, that's not your place because it's still he said, she said. People want to hear from the people to say, oh, it came from the horse's mouth, not somebody they allegedly told. Just say.
How could you not see that when you walk into this place?
There is a theory that the unconscious person was the surviving roommate. That the reason it came from her phone and not her was that, and this is literally based on just online speculation and conjecture, the roommate went up, saw what you were describing, ran out of the house and fainted, or ran down and fainted. The person picked up her phone, called 911. We have an unconscious person, not realizing what had caused her to faint. And several people who were in the house picked up the phone and spoke with the 911 dispatcher. The phone was going from person to person, so it was chaos.
Coming up, Kaylee called her ex-boyfriend 6 times.
Okay, so that's the version that was spreading around via this source that's close to the two roommates. That they did see what happened, came out. Somebody said they did call 911 after that. I don't know. I don't know what to believe, to tell you the truth. They came out after seeing the body, had allegedly called, I guess, after seeing the body, couldn't speak if one passed out, and then the other one couldn't talk because she was hysterical. As I said, this is like something out of a damn movie. It's like, who writes this stuff? Only somebody that would act this way. And I'm not trying to be mean, but what are the odds? One's on the floor, passed out, and one can't talk. And I get it. You would be hysterical seeing a person bloody. But damn, we need somebody that can assert the situation. And do you want strangers now passing the phone from person to person to 911? Then God forbid, we don't even know who actually went in the house. Because if somebody's on the ground and one's hysteric, you can't go in and save anybody in the house because everybody's outside talking in circles on a 911 call. This is crazy to me.
Prior to being murdered. Now, is this a coincidence or was she calling for help? We'll talk about that next.
At a vigil last night, Kaylee Gonzalez's father honored the friendship between his daughter and Madison Mogan.
I want everyone to know these girls were absolutely beautiful. Sixth grade, they just found each other. They did homework together. They came to our house together. They shared everything. Then they started looking at colleges. They came here together. And in the end, they died together in the same room, in the same bed.
This is a very intimate way to kill someone. To kill somebody with a knife is very up close. It's very personal. It's time consuming. And you're involved. You're covered in their blood. You smell the blood. You're right there. And that is a barrier that few people cross. And to do it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, this is a dangerous individual. Somebody knows this person.
Yes.
Somebody out there works with this person. Somebody out there is a parent or a brother or a sister to this person. Somebody knows who this is. Everybody has a baseline. And when people do something dramatic in their life, they tend to depart from that baseline. And you need to think about this. If you're listening to this right now, if there's someone you know that's been in or around Moscow, Idaho, and you think, no, but extend your thinking. You truly, truly need to think about that. Was it something that had scared them? Is that why she called her ex-boyfriend so many times? Were they barricaded in that room we don't know. If you have any tips regarding this case, please call the tip hotline at 208-883-7180 or email the tip line at ci.moscow.id.us. And those will be on drphil.com. I really want to thank all of you guys for coming here today. For more information about today's episode, you can log on to drphil.com. We'd like to take a moment.
All right, everybody. Season 21, episode 65, Dr. Phil. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for following the content. Please check out my video in the library I uploaded earlier today. I have put up a virtual tour. I got this from ex-FBI agent Jennifer Coffin-Daffer's Twitter page. Thank you so much for posting that. I make a short video giving you a tour, allegedly, of the inside of the house. Naturally, it may look a little bit different, but nonetheless, it's the basic layout of the house. You're entitled to your interpretation of how the perpetrator came into the house. This is a deep dive into that commentary. This is basically a part 2 of that. Did the girls that lived in the home give out the code to the front door? Because if we're to believe this rumor that the door was left open, could it be that that's how the perpetrator entered and exited? Not through a window, not through a slider door, 2nd or 3rd floor, but through the front door. So, how did he come in? Is it more than one perpetrator? More than one weapon used? Where's the weapon? Did he clean up, take a bath, take a shower? Did he cut himself? So many questions. Allegations of a glove being found by a certain YouTuber. We're going to play all that information. I'm not banking on anything because, one, I'm not there. I don't know the perpetrator. I do not know the victims. And as I told you, until you can bring me some information about the victims, how am I to know who the perpetrator is? If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Beganji, 129 Cash App, all stickers and chats are welcome during this live, taking a deep dive into this commentary. Did these kids give out the code? Because that would explain an easy way in, easy way out. And as I showed you in that virtual tour, he would have known that there were downstairs bedrooms. That bottom floor is not that far from the second floor because it's an open house. It's a house. Just has 3 levels, but it's a house. And if you go into my video, you will see the easy access from going to the front door. The stairs sit to the left. All you have to do is walk up the stairs. Boom, you're already in a small living room. Go down a little small hall, 1 bedroom. On the other side of that wall, the hallway, the kitchen, another bedroom, a closet, and then the stairs going up to the 3rd floor. It's not so mysterious as people are making it out to be about the noise. No way you can tell me you can't hear from the 2nd floor to the 1st because it's wide open. You may not be able to hear what's going on the 3rd, but if somebody is falling down, fighting, banging around on the 2nd floor, you can't tell me you couldn't hear it. Now, you a deep sleeper? Perhaps, yes. But who's going to say, yeah, I was up and heard some craziness going on and I was too scared to investigate? Because it happens all the time. People don't get involved in people's business. What if the girls were up on the 1st floor and heard the altercation on the 2nd floor between the killer, Xana, and Ethan and decided not to get involved? Because this is where I show you, you don't know people. What I tell one person is not what I told somebody else. So it's the account that the girls on the 1st floor gave the police, the account that they may counter somebody else. Did they tell somebody else a different version? Because to this day, nothing's been verified about the 911 call and the person passing out and the other one frantic, couldn't talk. That's somebody that's friends with them allegedly. And as I said, in order to clear your name, I would have got a person to speak on my behalf that's verifiable to say, hi, I'm a friend, associate of the 2 girls. They just want the public to know, hey, they did see the boy up there, but ran out and called. 1 passed out. 1 was too frantic to speak. What's wrong with letting somebody say that? I know all about investigations and keeping shit close to the vest. I know all about that. But I would want my name cleared so I wouldn't have people gossiping about me and thinking I had something to do with killing my damn roommates. That's me, personally. Let's go to all of my content pertaining to this case. Thank you so much for following the content. Like, share, subscribe. Possible clues. Former FBI agent on the latest clues in this case. Uploaded 9 hours ago. News Nation is the source. Thank you for your time, everybody. Surely appreciate it. Did they give out the passcode to the killer? Was he invited over that night? Did one of the roommates bring him home? Number 1. Did one of them invite him over during the night? Did the kids see or talk to each other before they went to bed that night? Is it true about Ethan having an altercation with a frat member that night? Could the frat member have came over to the house looking for Ethan and decided to go ham on everybody in the house? Why do that? They don't have a dog in the race. They don't have nothing to do with whatever you 2 argued about. So why kill the other girls? Why go upstairs and kill the other people? Because see, then that makes no sense. You're going to go upstairs and kill them, but you didn't go downstairs to kill the girls downstairs. Unless their rooms were locked and the killer did try to get in those rooms, but each girl had their door locked. Will we ever know the truth? Thank you for joining me.
Says that her wounds were different than the others. How does this signal that it could have been a targeted revenge murder?
Well, first of all, we don't know whether what the father is saying is accurate, so we have to take that into consideration. He talked apparently to the medical examiner. I don't think that's good practice on the medical examiner's part to let this information out. But certainly, if one victim in a multi-victim incident like this has more particular wounds, it could be. It also could be that victim just put up a better fight than the others. So it's really, you have to be cautious in how you make conclusions based on information that's not coming directly from the investigation.
There are also reports that a former homicide detective found a black glove on the ground outside of the home. How could this potentially help investigators?
Well, I don't think private investigators or former detectives should be out there, poking around the crime scene or a potential crime scene. It all depends on, we would hope that they turn that over to investigators and the investigators can assess its value. But you have a problem with chain of custody. You have a problem with the verifiability of whether that glove was there, when it was there. When it's found by a third party or a private party, you have to go through an extra level of process to determine its validity. So in other words, it's not found by the crime scene investigation team at the scene. It's found by a third party. You have to figure out who this third party is, where they found it, whether they're telling you the truth about where they found it and when they found it. So there's extra layers of work to do when you have private people out there snooping around.
I will play you that content to see how it coincides with this information, this black glove business. I don't know if he found it through watching the video and then called law enforcement to have them go to the crime scene to find it that way. I don't have verification that he went out there and found it, this certain YouTuber, but we're going to play that content as to clear up any rumors and misinformation. Thank you for joining me.
There's a new account from a neighbor hearing screams from the house, but writing off that noise because it was seen as a, quote, party house. What do you make of this?
Well, I think that's probably a good, accurate thing. I think that this was probably an off-campus party house. I've lived in them myself. It's also an explanation of why the two roommates downstairs, everybody's saying they didn't wake up or they haven't heard, they didn't hear anything. We don't know that. They may have heard something and just dismissed it as, drunk roommates coming home later than they did, stumbling around into furniture or whatever. So we don't know.
Very true. Very true.
Roommates heard or didn't hear. But I think that it was probably common on a Saturday night into a Sunday morning on a college campus for people to be coming in, at very late hours, maybe not in a very sober state and making some noise that others could pass off as just, that's commonplace for that house.
It just seems, I just want to imagine that it would sound different to scream because your life was in danger versus screaming.
Yes,
party.
Very true.
But really, we don't know that they were screaming for their life. We don't know what sounds were made. We have to assess that based on the information from the two surviving roommates.
All right, Bobby Chacon, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for watching. Go to
News Nation is the source. Bobby Chacon, very good information. You don't know if the girls and the other victim, Ethan, were able to scream because if their neck was cut, you can't scream if your throat's been slashed. If somebody was able to scream, as they said, if this is a party house, the girls downstairs, if woke, we'll just assume it's just them goofing off. Because we don't know how loud they got when they had company and visitors. And as they said, hey, do you know a scream for help versus a scream playing around? Because as I said, who's going to tell the truth? Yeah, I heard something suspicious, but I just didn't get up to go find out what was going on up there on the second floor. How crazy would that be to find that out? That they did hear something. One of the roommates did hear something, but ignored it. Investigators expand search for killer. Idaho college students. GMA is the source. Thank you for joining me. Please check out my library for the virtual tour of the house so you can get a general idea of how the house was set up. Thank you for joining me.
Search after 30 days. Kana Whitworth joined us with the details. Good morning, Kana.
Michael, good morning. So authorities say they have received several new tips, and right now they have an army of analysts poring over surveillance video from all over town and the gas station near the crime scene looking for that white Hyundai Elantra. Authorities also saying they have a lot of information they haven't released yet. This morning, pressure and frustration growing in Idaho as the hunt for a murderer hits 30 days with no results.
You can feel it here in Moscow. It's just a very heavy cloud. It's a hard place to be.
Police spokesperson Robbie Johnson telling ABC News they brought in an army of experts and FBI support to comb through new tips about the white Hyundai Elantra seen in the immediate area in the early morning hours of November 13th.
We'd like to know who was in that car that night, where it might be now. It could be in a different state. We have resources across the country that are ready to jump on any information we can provide on that and follow those leads and talk to whoever is in that car.
Local businesses heeding the call, turning over surveillance video, anything that might help.
They said that ours was actually one of the best, clearest. They could see clear across to the other side of the road. So they were kind of hopeful when they did get that footage.
With new details, authorities re-interviewing residents, bringing back memories.
Do they have those reports of a scream that was heard?
They're aware of people talking about that happening, and of course they're looking into that type of thing. Every bit of information that comes in, they're looking into.
The university preparing to close for winter break after holding commencement ceremonies over the weekend, honoring Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves, who was set to graduate. Instead, her father Steve, desperate for answers and pleading with authorities to find the person and the weapon responsible.
This was a brutal weapon. It sounds like it was a professional type weapon that couldn't break. And they weren't stab wounds. They were like large punctures.
And so right now, people in this normally close-knit college town are asked to remain vigilant, to travel in pairs and stick to well-lit areas. In fact, authorities say this is a new way of life in Moscow, at least for now. George.
Okay, Kana, thanks.
Well, hey there, GMA fans.
Good morning, America. Source. A lot of info has been gathered and not released by the police department, which we would expect that. Still looking for this white car, Elantra, Hyundai. What is the significance of this car? The occupants, that was plural. Did somebody see more than one person hanging in a car near the house suspiciously? How many tips came in about that car? Is the car still around in the state visiting? Was it rented? When you watch the footage in this GMA segment, you see a house sitting right there near the front of their house. It sits close to the road. So 2 windows are facing what would be their parking lot. Did anybody hear or see anything that night in their bedroom in that house? Because it was bold to walk by this house knowing you're going in here to kill these people and have to exit. You're welcome, sweetheart. So the perpetrator didn't care about going in and out of this driveway knowing there's a house sitting right there. Stay woke. Even if they went through the back of the house, there's a house that sits behind their house. At the back of the house, the entry of the 2nd and 3rd floor levels. Very brazen to risk being seen. You cannot assume you're not going to be seen because it is dark 30. Stay woke. News Nation, once again, they have a lot of information, says the police. Giving you a detailed overlay of what is being introduced into this saga of the Idaho 4. Thank you for joining me.
Police say they are sifting through hundreds of hours of videos and tips for clues. News Nation senior national correspondent Brian Enton is in Moscow, Idaho, with more.
Police really emphasizing that this is not a cold case. They say tips continue to come in and that some of those tips have been valuable. It has now been 1 month since 4 University of Idaho students were stabbed and brutally murdered in their off-campus house. Moscow, Idaho police releasing very little, still saying no suspect has been identified. But new Monday, police also said this in a recorded statement on YouTube.
We do have a lot of information, and we are specifically keeping that information safe. We're not releasing specific details because we do not want to compromise this investigation. It's what we must do. We owe that to the families, and we owe that to the victims.
The house where the murders happened remains a crime scene, roped off and guarded, as recently as Thursday night. News Nation cameras were there when plainclothed investigators went into the house, spending about an hour inside. I think there's a concern among the community, that there's this fear, and it's now been a month, that this could be becoming a cold case.
Thank you, Pink.
Is that possible?
Absolutely not. This is not a cold case. And what you can see to show that is we have so many tips coming in. Over the weekend, we have essentially an army of experts and support from the FBI to go through all these tips, and the tips are valuable.
Police emphasize that they have not scaled back on the investigation, that the same number of detectives, both local and federal, that have been working on the case continue to work on the case. They also say they're still looking for information on a white Hyundai Elantra that was spotted around the time of the murders near the house where the murders happened. This house behind me remains a crime scene. Adrian?
All right, our thanks to Brian. Thank you for watching. Go to
News Nation, this is Source with Brian Hinton. Thank you so very much for following the content. Thank you for liking this video. Amen. A lot of info released, as I said, once again. White Elantra, searching for this car and the occupants. If you have any information, please dial 208-883-7180. Local and federal authorities helping an investigation of the Idaho 4 video surveillance of the neighborhoods, gas stations nearby have been recanvassed. What have they found on video surveillance of the neighborhood, neighbors, and any streets adjoining King Road? And once again, please go to my library to check out the recent upload of a virtual tour of the house. You can make your own assertion by looking inside of the house, because sometimes it's better to get a visual yourself to try to determine which entry did the perpetrator go in and exit out of. Did the kids give the passcode to somebody before or that night? Is the killer known to the victims? Was this a random attack? Was this a targeted attack? If we are to believe that Kaylee moved out, why would she be the target? Always assess the information given to you, not rumors, not rhetoric. Now, rumor mill, which I do not try to do rumors, especially in this case. Allegedly, someone is saying that Ethan had words with somebody at the frat house. It got very heated. We still have all this misinformation of where they were after that, leaving that house. Who knows if this is true? Maybe they went somewhere to cool off, took a ride somewhere, rode to the lake, to look at the stars, the river. I don't know, because I don't know the kids. You're entitled to your interpretation. I just hope that any information coming in is factual and truthful. Please check out Court TV, uploaded 20 hours ago. Were the Idaho student stabbings personal? It's a 27-minute video. I will try to assess that, possibly the next live, because I do not want this one to run too long. Let's go to Fox. Sorting through the tips of this quadruple homicide. What are the tips that have come in that are valuable and not rumor and gossip? Evidence taken at the scene. What has come back from the lab? Phone pings. No DNA match. Person not in CODIS. But I also brought you a video yesterday about genealogy. Can they catch the killer through genetics? Stay woke, everybody.
Thanks so much. No doubt you've been following this story from the very beginning. Earlier today, according to Fox News Digital, one of the parents spoke to them. I believe it was the father of Kaylee Goncalves, who were describing the wounds his daughter suffered, calling the police essentially, cowards that they have not released information. How would a parent know the extent of his daughter's injuries, Randy? And do you think that's appropriate? Do victims' relatives and family members, do they get described that by law enforcement?
Well, I would imagine that they did, but I think the really important takeaway here is that we've got to separate the lawyer from the human being, the lawyer from the parent. No one can even begin to imagine, certainly not I, what it must be like for a parent to wake up one day and find out that your child has been murdered. It is beyond, I think, certainly my ability to wrap my head around. So no one can criticize this father for saying or doing anything. But there's always going to be that tension because you have a parent that wants to know everything, a parent that wants someone's head on a spit for what has happened to his or her child. But from a law enforcement perspective, you want to do your investigation quietly. You don't want to give anyone a heads up. I have to give kudos to former President Trump, who he really was the one who said, listen, I'm not a big fan of telling the enemy what I'm planning on doing. And I think there's something wise in that. So certainly law enforcement doesn't want to be out telling everyone, listen.
Of all people names, he's got to mention to compare Donald Trump.
Want to give a perpetrator or perpetrators a heads up. You want to be one step ahead of them. From a parenting standpoint, call me a coward, call me anything you want. My God, I'm going to do everything I can as far as law enforcement goes, but you can't fault these parents.
Randy, you're so right, but I mean, so little information has been released. We don't even have a sense of some of the leads they have gotten. They're looking, of course, for the occupants of this, make and model of this white Hyundai Elantra that they believe was in the vicinity of the scene. But that's about it. And so no murder weapon has been recovered, which I find, quite suspect. Speaking of suspects, we're not privy to if they have, a list or one person they're honing in on. But in your view, having followed all of these investigations in your career, does it seem like they're withholding too much? Or maybe they just don't know. I don't know.
I don't know that you can ever withhold too much, because if you want to apprehend the right person, not just any person, because let's face it, about the only thing worse than not catching anyone is catching the wrong person. Because if you catch the wrong person, it's going to make it all that more difficult once you believe you have the right person to convince 12 people that, listen, we did everything right, but no, you got to believe me this time. So you want to get it right the first time. And if you want to get it right the first time, why would you give away your hand?
Right.
Why would you give away what you know? Why would you allow the person or persons who are responsible for this to start to feel that heat, start to feel that pressure? Maybe they split. Maybe they get rid of the evidence. Look, it's no surprise to me that the murder weapon wasn't recovered. If you haven't recovered the person or persons who did it, you would think they would be, I hate to say smart enough not to leave the murder weapon behind. You take the evidence with you. So I think right now, and again, it's so easy for me to say, let law enforcement do their job. Let them follow up on their leads. You don't have to tell us what leads are viable, what leads aren't. Let them follow, because they're looking at everything. Videos, they have this white Hyundai. They're tracing that one white Hyundai, trying to find out whose car it is, who was in it. They're looking at everything. They're looking at neighborhood stores, looking for credit card receipts, anything with the victims apparently. And it's morbid, but they placed bags around the victim's hands.
Yes.
Because if in fact any of the victims woke up and fought back, then you could have cellular evidence underneath their fingernails, on their skin. There could be DNA evidence. We really need to let law enforcement do their job if you want to catch the right person. Listen, if you're playing poker with someone, I don't think you play with your cards face up. You play face down for a reason, because you want to win. And if you want law enforcement to win, then you can't give away to the bad people what it is that they're doing.
Yeah. Randy, what about the fact, obviously there's a phone number, there's an email that the public can go to if they have information that the police wants to hear. There's been no, dollar amount or reward for information. Do you find that odd?
No, and as I understand it, I believe family members are raising money. I mean, look, rewards are always fraught with peril, because you get kooks and you get people just thinking that it's the lottery. So I'm always a little bit, I understand the rationale, but I think we have to hope that we have concerned, upstanding citizens who want to do the right thing, who want to see justice done, who even if they think, maybe it's nothing, if you don't say something, you never know. So let everyone come forward, whatever it is that they think. And that needle, that haystack, it can be found. We just have to know where to look.
All right. Randy Zellin, as always, we appreciate you and your insight into this particular story. We know it's really captivated and generated a lot of interest nationwide, and hopefully there's a break in the case soon. It's now been a month. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. That's live now from Fox. Thank you all so much for following the content. Let's go over what was said. Very interesting information. Criticism of the father. The guy is saying basically, the guest, he's upset, he's angry. He wants somebody's head on the chopping block, naturally. But in my opinion, you don't want to bump heads with officials because these are the same people, local and federal, that are investigating the crime of your child and her friends. So I wouldn't want to bump heads with these people. When you look at the picture of the house, to me, it's the house of doom. Every day they keep showing videos of this house, front and back, side to side. It's depressing looking at this house day to day. The host of the show asked about knowing the injuries of his daughter. Well, naturally, sir, he would know the injuries, the father, Mr. Gonçalves, because he had to view the body. Now, did he view the body of the other decedents or saw pictures from the coroner? I am curious as to be able to compare the wounds of his child versus the others. I do believe he got information from the coroner, so he wrote on what that woman said, possibly behind closed doors, that his daughter sustained more injuries. Is that the truth? Did he hear it from the coroner, or he saw visually the other victims' bodies? Withholding too much information. The police, are they? Do you feel like they're withholding too much information? As most of you know, you show your hand, you let the killer know your every move. And then naturally, you're going to be critiqued of anything you say and don't say. Catching the wrong person. Naturally, you do not want to move too fast in arresting someone because you only get one chance at this. And you want to make sure you get it right the first time. I do concur with what he said about that. No weapon left behind. The killer knew not to leave a weapon. Checkmate. Leads, viable or not. They do not want to give them out, the police, to the general public. Once again, asked to hold everything close to the vest and not jeopardize the investigation. The victim's hands were covered before being removed from the house. Very important protocol. Asked not to have any transference of anybody moving the bodies after death. What DNA is going to be found under the fingernails, because we heard that some of the victims fought back. He also mentioned DNA on the skin of the victims or any type of cross-contamination, fibers, so on and so forth. Very interesting information. Let them do their job, the police. Such as when playing cards, you don't hold your cards up, you hold them face down so you can win. Exactly. This is a very strategic game out there in Idaho with the police and the killer. And we do not want the killer to think he has won because it's 1 month in and he has not been apprehended. No reward. Why not? It mentions that the family will possibly be raising some money themselves. But as this guest says, you do not want kooks coming out and everyone thinking this is a lottery. So you're entitled to agree or disagree. Some of us think there should be a reward. And then some disagree, saying you only do that when it's a cold case and you haven't gotten any leads or tips that are viable to solve the homicides. This guest also says, let everybody come forward and let the police weed out those tips. You just have to know where to look in those tips. But as I said, many people are meddlesome and they will be wasting some of these investigators' times with gossip and rhetoric, and that takes away from weeding through the tips that are actually factual. Actually factual. Going through all my database to bring you the latest information uploaded to the YouTube queue per this case. Thank you so much for joining me. Idaho victims' hands reportedly bagged to preserve evidence. News Nation is the source. Thank you for joining me. Exactly. You can't make everyone happy. And that's the problem with this case. Families going to be upset because these are their children, but they have to understand this is a process, because as this gentleman said, you do not want the wrong person apprehended. Imagine arresting the wrong person. They stand trial for the murder and they are innocent, and the killer is free to go back out here and kill more people, because as you heard on the Dr. Phil show from that lady psychologist or whatever, if it's a serial killer, he will have a cooling off point, but he will go back out and kill if indeed we are talking about a serial killer. Thank you for joining me, everybody. This is News Nation.
Scratch and they will claw at their killer like their life depends on it. And it is honestly the very last thing that a victim can do to help the police catch the person that ultimately kills them. Because in that scratching frenzy, the killer's skin cells become embedded under the victim's nails. And if that victim happens to claw at the killer's clothing, fibers might also get lodged under those victim's fingernails. And so bagging the hands of a victim preserves that magical, precious evidence as those bodies head off to the office of the medical examiner for autopsy. And today, a report that is exactly what happened to these 4 kids and their bodies. And there was something else that was revealed today, a report that Steve Gonsalves had been informed by the medical examiner that his daughter, Kaylee, that her injuries were more ferocious than her friends. Specifically, the report said that the stab wounds were less like stab wounds and more like tears. But we talked to the coroner today, asking if she would describe Kaylee's injuries that way, as tears, and she said no, clearly, exclamation point, in fact. And it honestly seems exactly that's what she has said from the get-go, because here she is on November 17th, just days after the killings. She was actually speaking with me live on this program about the nature of the kids' injuries. Have a listen. I only ask this because it sometimes determines what kind of a crime this was, a crime of passion, a random crime, a fight, a struggle. Were any of them slashed? Were any of their necks cut? Or were these all puncture wounds?
Well, it was a pretty large knife, so it's really hard to call them puncture wounds. And they were definitely stabbings. And it has to be somebody that's pretty angry in order to stab 4 people to death.
Also in question today, a report that says Kaylee's lungs and liver were slashed. Maybe not, according to what the coroner told us a month ago. Have a listen.
There were multiple stab wounds, yes, on them. And
were there? Go ahead.
And most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound. Yes.
Can you describe what that one might have been?
But they were to the fatal ones were to the chest area or the upper body area.
It's hard to separate fact from fiction, especially with so little clarity from law enforcement. The Moscow police told
upper body injuries to the chest area. Here, this alleged coroner speaks. I don't really like her speaking if she's not qualified, but nonetheless, imagine trying to sleep, because everybody sleeps differently. Some people are stomach sleepers, such as the Queen. I also sleep on my side, left side. Some sleep on their backs. Either way, in order to be stabbed in the chest, that means you'll have to be on your back. So imagine trying to sleep either direction and flipped over on your back, and a person is straddling you, because I don't want to believe the person is going to stand at the side of the bed and stab you. Could stand to the side of the bed and stab you. But worst case scenario naturally would be jumping on top of you and straddling you and stabbing you. And their weight is going to be suppressing you to where you can't move. So while you're sitting here damn near feeling suffocated, you're now trying to fight off possibly a bigger person, if we believe that this perpetrator is bigger than the victims, the women at least. Their weight is holding you down, and you now are trying to fight them off. And they have the advantage because of, one, their weight, they're strong, and they have a weapon, a knife, a big knife. And sickening is knowing that two girls were in the bed together. What was one doing while one was being stabbed? This is horrible. And the more people try to describe the stabbings, it just makes you sick to your stomach, because how could it not? Two in the bed together. What was one doing? Was one on their side, on their stomach, face down, sleep? What? Did they wake up while one was being stabbed, tried to stop him, tried to run? One tried to run, he jumps out, brings her back in, stabs her in the bed. It's the visual is too much versus what we really don't know how it all went down. But trying to visualize it is worse. Looking at the outside of the house of doom. Trying to visualize what the inside look out. I take you on a virtual tour in my video earlier today. It's sickening. Going in there, looking around, this animated tour, trying to piece together how it all went down, which room he went in first. Why a girl is lying on the floor, that means she had to been out of the bed. Ethan allegedly on the floor in an open hallway or kitchen, that means he wasn't in the bed. So this is why you have to say to yourself, did they get up because they heard noise, or they were up just doing their thing and confronted the killer, or the killer confronted them, which is so out? You don't know. Only the blood trail will tell the story. This is horrific. And arguing over whose wounds were worse, you're entitled to your opinion. Mr. Gonsalves is entitled to his opinion. This is his child. He can weigh it how he sees fit. But he needs to understand that other children lost their lives as well. And their parents are just as mortified and angry as he is. And as you see the past couple of weeks, you don't hear anything from Xana's mother, father, family, siblings, the Chapins, or Maddie's family. Don't you find that interesting? Only Mr. Gonsalves is the one doing all the talking and the moaning and the groaning. Very interesting information. What will the hands reveal on the victims since they were bagged? Thank the Lord. So for some of you who do believe they don't know what they're doing, Moscow police, they did have enough sense to bag the victims' hands. What we have to worry about is all the people that possibly could have went in the house before the ambulance and the police got there, because somebody had to go in to pull the kids out to try to preserve life or determine that they were already dead. Perhaps there was no ambulance to take anybody out because everybody was already deceased. So you got to count how many people actually went in the house before 911 got there and the detectives and the police. Cross-contamination. All the people that visited the house recently. All the surfaces that may have been touched by somebody who was there 5 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 5 months ago, because we don't know how clean the girls were and if they dusted all the surfaces, the handrails, the wall going up the stairs from the first floor to the second. That's a half wall there. Those are things you have to count in an investigation. What surfaces did the perpetrator touch? Very interesting. All right, everybody. Please check out Court TV. They have information uploaded, about a 27-minute video asking, were the stabbings personal? I also played you Dr. Phil's segment on this case. I've also played you Fox, sorting through the tips of this case. And also I found a story from WFLA that's very interesting. A woman was found wrapped in a trash bag by a fisherman off of Edgemont Key. Of course, Queen did a little bit of digging into that said information. And allegedly she was found in federal waters, which is probably many miles away, I would assume, from what is called state line waters and the shore. Very interesting. Found in a trash bag that was also found in a canvas bag. Who put her out there? On my community page, I have some questions for you all to answer. Do you think using genetic genealogy will help find the kill of University of Idaho students? 88% of you said yes. 13% of you said no. 120 votes. Did one of the roommates give the killer the code to the front door keypad? Yes, 30%. No, 15%. Not sure, 54%. 112 votes. Banfield has decided to speak to this lady who's representing the police department. What a debauch. Woo! Interview. I don't think this lady should have spoke on behalf of the police department because she knew she could not answer anything. And Banfield, you knew she couldn't answer anything. But I'm going to play that commentary for you so you can get a gist of what the hell is going on out there in Idaho with this new resource information officer speaking on behalf of the Moscow Police Department. News Nation is the source, everybody.
A sorority ride program. How many people have been revisited and re-interviewed?
It's all part of the investigative process.
So I can't get a number.
Because we are ongoing in this process and doing it as leads come in and as new information comes in, that number is not something we're concluding at this time.
Understand. Have you had a chance to do an exhaustive interview with the person who drove Kaylee and Maddie home from the food truck? Originally, it was an Uber driver. Then it was a private party. And then I think it's a sorority ride program. But there was a driver, presumably, who heard a lot of things that were being said in the seats that were occupied by Kaylee and Maddie. May have heard a phone conversation. But have you done an exhaustive interview with that driver to find out what was said? And if so, was it valuable?
Rest assured, we're interviewing anyone in any way that could know what happened that night, provide us information to help with this case. No, that's just part of the ongoing efforts we're making. And again, we understand these questions, wanting to have answers, how hard it is for the families not to have them. But again, when we talk about these specifics, this information, we have to keep it safe. We have to make sure we're using information for the integrity of the case to make an arrest and ultimately go to trial and get justice.
Sure, understand. One of the former tenants in the home showed us a picture and also recounted that when he lived in the home as late as 2019, December 2019, exactly 3 years ago, he recounted that each of those rooms was rented separately and thus each room had a keypad lock to enter. So it was almost like a communal living. Everybody would share the living room and the kitchen, but they effectively weren't, known to each other prior to perhaps renting the house. One of the pictures that we saw in the social media showed the room across from the kitchen did not appear to have that keypad lock. Do you know how many of those bedrooms had individual locks?
Of course, we've been hearing all about speculation and questions about locks and so many other things about this case. And really the best service we can provide to the public and to this investigation is really to remind people that all the information we have that is appropriate for release, we have done that on the website and our official Facebook page. So we really ask you to go back and look at all that information. So as you're hearing things, cross-check it with that to see what we have released. Because if
that has never been released, that's why I ask.
I'm sorry, say again?
That part has never been released. It's not on any press releases. It's never been addressed. And it's a curious piece of information given that a prior tenant has testified to the press and has shown visual evidence that his downstairs bedroom door had one of those keypad locks. And he said every one of the tenants had one. So my question is just, did every single room still 3 years later have those keypad locks? And if not, which rooms did, which rooms didn't?
What I'm trying to say is that's not information we're going into at this time. We're focusing on the information that's really critical for
you hear that?
investigation itself.
So I'll push a little further on that, fully respecting what you're saying, Robbie, and that is that Jeff Kernodle, Xana's dad, reportedly was at the home the weekend prior to the murders. Xana's mom, Kara, told us that he had worked on the lock just that weekend before. She was unclear if it was an outdoor lock or if it was an indoor lock, perhaps Xana's room. Are you aware of that information? And if so, how have you plumbed that piece of information with Mr. Kernodle?
Well, investigators, of course, are working with any information that comes in, information about the house itself. We also have
that piece. Do they know about that piece? It happened on our air, which is why I find it's an important question. It wouldn't necessarily have been something that you were privy to unless you were watching that night, which is why I asked that question. Mrs. Northington, Kara's mom, said that Jeff Kernodle, Kara's dad, was there the prior weekend working on the lock. So I'm just curious if you knew of that information, and if so, have you been able to follow that vein?
Remember, we're not going into specifics or addressing these types of things because we have to have the information we have and keep that close, because we don't want to put out something that could jeopardize this investigation. We understand that people want all these specific answers, but that's not our main goal here. Our main goal is to have justice for these victims and the families, and that's what we're focusing on.
Thank you for watching. Go to News Nation.
Banfield, you're going to have to know when to stop interviewing these people, because you should have known they weren't going to answer anything. Let's go over this information pertaining to Moscow saying their main goal is to have justice for the victims, not answer trivial questions from Banfield, basically. Thank you, Zuder. I thank you for the support. Go to my notes. Thank you all so much for joining me and commenting. Driver. Was the driver thoroughly interviewed, assessed? Naturally, the driver's been removed. The driver who brought the girls home, Kaylee and Maddie. This resource personnel didn't give any answers about the driver being interviewed. Sharing common areas, kitchen, bathrooms, all the girls, first, second floor, third floor. I have a problem with that. I personally would not have wanted to live in a house with people where I have to share a kitchen or a bathroom, because you really don't know people. And they always say that you really don't learn a person until you move in with them or live with them. They say that a lot for relationships. You don't know a person until you live with them. Very, very true. You hear Banfield saying perhaps these people didn't know each other before rooming with one another. So I'm going to ask that question. Did all of the roommates know of each other before signing a lease in this house? Because as I said, until you know the victims, you can't know the perpetrator. You have to know what was going on with the victims to get to the gist of who the killer is. And I, as I said, personally would not have wanted to room with anybody at 21, 20, or 40, 50. I'm old enough to be these kids' mother. And when I was their age in college, I stayed in a dorm. I did not live off campus. When I came out of school, I rented my own apartments up until 50 years old is what I'm saying. I have not lived with anyone in a rooming situation for long. Naturally moving and transitioning through the years, but not on a continual basis, and especially not at their age. At 2021, I had my own place and my own name and my own name on the lease. I do not want to share a kitchen, a bathroom with another woman or a man, unless I'm dating the guy. You understand what I'm saying? But to each his own. But I do believe you can build bad blood with that many people in a house. 6 people living in a house, plus company, friends, associates, family members, guests. That could be a damn problem. So one day you might decide to come out your room. You want to go sit in the living room. Well, you can't, because your roommate's in there with her friends, associates, cat, dog, monkey, goat. You see where I'm going with this? Because who wants to pay rent to just stay in a damn bedroom? You can do that in a dorm. You can do that in a dorm. Am I going to pay rent to stay in a house that I can't even go in the common areas? One living room? So the people on the bottom floor had to go to the second floor to sit in the living room. So imagine the girls that live on the second floor, whomever, or third floor, they want to be in the living room. So imagine now 6 people in the living room with their friends and friends, the company, relatives, people coming to visit. Stay woke. This could be a problem. Unless you're just a loner, wanting to live off campus, and you don't mind staying in your room all the damn time to pay the landlord just for a damn room. Not quaint. But as I said, to each its own. I would have personally tried to find an apartment with 2 bedrooms and me and my best friend, good friend, share a small apartment together or a decent sized apartment together. That way, it's just she and I sharing kitchen, living room, laundry space, blah, blah, blah. And that's another thing. The laundry room was allegedly on the bottom floor. As I showed you in that virtual tour, it's on the right side of the front door, next to another bedroom. Kara, Xana's mother, says that Jeff came to work on the locks the weekend before. What exactly did he do to the locks in the house or outside? Did he work on just the girl's bedroom, his own daughter's room? Did he work on any outside locks? I wouldn't see him working on any outside locks because that should be up to management to repair any type of locks on the glass sliders and the front door, and also repairing any windows. That would be up to management. This resource personnel tells Banfield, hey, we're working on info coming in. But Banfield is trying to stress to this lady that the information about the locks is important, and it was aired on their show. But this lady's basically telling her they're not trying to jeopardize this case, and that is not their main focus. The ins and outs of the house, locks, Pookie, Ray Ray, Bubba, he said, she said, their focus is on finding the killer. So you see this lady is strictly by the book, and Banfield lost this battle with this person. Because I think Banfield should know there's no need in interviewing anybody from the police department because they're not going to tell you anything about this case. They're not going to tell you about wounds. They're not going to tell you about who's the target, not a target. They're not going to tell you anything about surveillance, CCTV footage, who they've re-interviewed, who has an alibi, who's been cleared, who ain't been cleared, who took a lie detector test. Let's talk about that because that's something that has not been mentioned in any information I have brought to this network pertaining to the Idaho 4. Were any lie detectors administered to any of the roommates and participants close to the victims? All the people insinuated into this case by social media hacks, did law enforcement administer any lie detector tests to Jeremy, the neighbor, boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, neighbors, anybody that had a disagreement with Ethan, if that allegation is true, the driver of the ride share, Mr. Gonsalves, any parents, Kara's mother, all the people you all have implicated as the killers. Because some of you have been some busy bees out there. Did anybody take a lie detector test? Did anybody offer to take a lie detector test? Interesting. Never thought about that. Until now. Shut your mouth. I'll have to put that in one of my poll questions. All audio is on my YouTube channel via the YouTube Q, my community page. Retired detective found glove at Idaho crime scene. This information was mentioned a few videos ago. Banfield is going to talk to one of the most infamous YouTubers out there. You entitled to believe the information or not? I'm just going to listen. Thank you for joining me. And where's the landlord? Why haven't you spoken about these people dying in your house? Are you trying to rent the house? That's why you want the house cleared. What is your role in this mess of a crime? Do you have any ideas who could have killed the kids? Did the landlord put pressure on the police to clear the scene? I'm very curious to that. Is he, she, they trying to make plans to re-rent the rooms. Now, imagine that. Somebody coming in to live in this fucking house after those kids were butchered. I cannot.
It was dropped or it was thrown out outside the home where the 4 college students were stabbed to death in Moscow. And there is a good chance that it would still be there right now. But for a former homicide detective turned podcaster who noticed it while he was actually visiting the scene on Thanksgiving, which is 11 days after the murders. Chris McDonough is a veteran of the Oceanside, California Police Department, and currently he's the director with the National Cold Case Foundation. He's also co-host of the podcast, The Interview Room, and he is live with me tonight. Detective, it's so good to have you. First of all, I am shaking my head as I even think I'm doing this interview with you. Take me there. Tell me what happened. You literally showed up and looked down and said, hello, gentlemen, come over here. Have you seen this? Is that really how simple this was?
Yeah, it really was, Ashley. I mean, it was my wife and I, it was Thanksgiving Day. We happened to be up here in Idaho. And I said to her, I said, hey, let's just go over where that, situation's taking place at the university to get some tape. And we're walking up the street, and the first thing that caught my attention, to be honest with you, was all of the cars still parked on the property. And then I looked over and I saw there was an officer controlling the scene sitting in his vehicle. And I looked to the left and I saw that what appeared to be a glove. And I looked at my wife and I said, is that a glove? And she goes, yeah, I think it is. And so about where Brian was standing tonight, I walked over and looked over, and sure enough, it was a glove. And I immediately
you know what I'm going to do? I am going to, Chris, thank you for saying that. When we go back to Brian in a little bit, I'm going to actually ask him to walk me to the exact spot so that everybody who's watching right now gets the full perspective. Sometimes it's hard.
Yes,
when you're
it
watching
is.
through
That's true.
a one-dimensional TV screen. So I'm going to do that. In the meantime, help me out with this one because you're the murder detective, but you're also the person who found it. What kind of glove was it, and the significance of the kind of glove as pertains to a murder?
Well, I can't really tell what type of glove it is, if it's a male, female. And obviously the significance, maybe nothing. But it also could be very significant. There appeared to have snow on it, so I assumed it had been there for quite some time, at least before the earlier snowfall. I later learned there are photographs of that glove floating online, and you can clearly see it there. And I was unaware of those at the time. And when I told the officer, I waved him over and I said, "Hey, you need to come take a look at this." And he walked over, and his first words were, "Oh, wow." And I said, yeah, and I told him, I said, hey, I'm a retired homicide guy. You probably want to collect that, get your evidence people out here to do that. And he took some photographs of it, and I assumed that they, had collected it. I videotaped them doing it just in case, at least taking the photographs. But yeah, it was crazy. It was just sitting there.
And this is, to be clear, it's inside the crime tape. This was not something that you discovered outside the crime tape, but they weren't watching, they weren't looking for it. So they'd had 11 days to scour the outside of the property. And I need to remind our viewers that you're from California, where one of the biggest first cases of my career happened, and a bloody glove was the significant piece of evidence in O.J. Simpson's case, which is why we don't make light of something that's just maybe looks like garbage. Certainly that's just a couple dozen feet from the front door.
Yeah, I mean, the significance of it, is unknown at this point. Obviously, if it is involved, then it could be, very important. If it's not, then, at least you have it and you can put it into evidence just to say it's there. So, the officer, in my opinion, said he was going to bring the evidence folks to come collect it. And I hope they did that, to be honest with you.
So the other key part here is that you, as a homicide detective, you've seen the inside of a courtroom or two. And today the police were telling us part of the reason they're keeping information so close to the guest is to preserve the pristine nature of the prosecution, of the criminal procedure. So I could see a defense attorney watching our interview right now and saying, you didn't even see the most critical evidence, even inside the crime tape for over a week and a half. Like, you leave something too long and that becomes fodder
for a defense later on as well. So it's a problem if you don't pick it up for the investigators. It's also a problem for the prosecutors. I'm going to just give you about 20 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. And 100%. I mean, and so you got to ask yourself, why were the cars still there for 2 or 3 weeks? I mean, the first thing you do is you work the crime scene from the outside in. You don't work the crime scene from the inside out. And those cars should have been impounded within day 1 or day 2.
Yeah, I also thought that they should be looking at the GPS of all those cars, and you don't do that while they're parked. So that's fascinating. And you and I are going to have a longer conversation about working a case from the outside in. So this is your formal invitation back. Chris McDonough, thank you so much for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
Chris McDonough talking to Banfield on News Nation. Very interesting information. So what's the glove that of belonging to a woman or a man or a child? Snow on it, which would indicate the glove was there before the snowfall. And murders happened before snow came down. Very interesting information. They were by a garbage can inside the tape, which means it's right there near the driveway. And we would assume those garbage cans belong to that property for the kids to put their trash in. Did the killer rush trying to get rid of evidence and put that glove in there, but left one glove out by mistake? Very interesting information. He filmed the cop taking pictures of the glove. What are the odds Chris McDonough will be the one to find a damn glove inside the crime tape? Go figure. How did they miss that glove right there? Because I do find that interesting. As I said, what are the odds? Ex-retired detective travels to Idaho. He and the wife are walking around, snooping and watching and gaping like many people have, and he sees a glove outside of a trash can. And when you see the close-up picture, you will see it looks like a gray can that's sitting close to where the glove is. How did the police miss that? He says you work a crime scene from the outside in, and the car should have been impounded day 1. And I've heard a few other experts, law officials, ex-law officials, ex-FBI agents give that same commentary that the car should have been removed. I do believe the car sat there too long, but many may have thought, well, the car sat there and they didn't drive the car. Some of them Ubered that night or took a ride share. They don't have any significance. Well, if you're the cop and you think so, detective, that's on you. But I do find it interesting that we have not heard from the bar where the kids were. How many bars did the kids go to that night? Why haven't we heard anything? Got any footage of that? Just this grub bus business? Why hasn't the landlord spoken up on this hellacious crime that took place on his property in his home that he owns? Why not? Has he been forcing the hand of law enforcement to hurry up and clear the crime scene so he can clean this house up and sell the house and or rent the house out? Hello, Scott. Thank you for joining. What's the 411 with the landlord? Why have you not spoke out about this horrific crime? These kids were paying you rent money, so the right thing to do would be to speak up about the deaths of these kids. The mayor, I can't remember if the mayor has spoken. I thought maybe the mayor did. I have to stand corrected if not. But also the bar patrons where the kids allegedly were that night. Why is there no video released of any of the bar places where the children went that night? Anything. There's also information that there were no cameras at the frat house, outside or inside, to my knowledge. I will stand corrected on that information as well. And also law officials are trailing the area for CCTV footage of the kids' whereabouts on that evening before death. Yes, I think the house should be torn down. I wouldn't put anything there. But that's up to the owner and the city. They can come to some type of agreement. Bringing you all set information uploaded to the queue pertaining to this horrific crime in Idaho. Please go to my community board to take the polls. News Nation was that last source. Before that, hands bagged of the victims. What will it show of those kids? Right now, there's a young man missing in France. He is a white person, male, missing. They have him on camera going into a store, but he's not been seen since then. News Nation has that information. And as most of you know, Brittany Griner is out. The captain of the police department, Roger Lanier, has given commentary pertaining to this case. Celine Dion is not doing very well. She has a rare neurological disorder, stiff person syndrome. Prayers for her. Prayers for the young man missing in France. Prayers for the young woman found out to shore in Florida in a trash bag and canvas bag. Who dumped that lady's body out there? And who is her killer? My last video, live now from Fox. Idaho murders. Police are keeping information safe. Don't want to compromise this investigation. Thank you all so much for the support. Please go to my library and check out the virtual tour of the house. Leave your comments. Tell me what you think. Which entry did the perpetrator come in? And did the kids give the passcode to the perpetrator? Thank you for joining me.
Kaylee Gonsalves and Madison Mogan while they were sleeping in their off-campus home between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. on November 13th. Part of the crime scene preservation, Idaho investigators bagged the victims' hands in efforts to possibly save clues before moving their bodies out of the crime scene. Of course, following all the information here on Live Now from Fox, we're giving an update today out of Idaho, including from a police captain, as they're continuing to sort tips about this ongoing unsolved investigation that at this point has no suspect or suspect and also no murder weapons.
Good morning. My name is Roger Lanier. I'm a captain with the Moscow Police Department. I'm in charge of the Operations Division. And today is December 12th, Monday. And I want to give you an update on the King Road homicide investigations, at least the information that we have to this point. Over the weekend, investigators still continued to sort through numerous tips, calls, and online tips in regard to this investigation. There's been a lot of questions about the white car that we've been interested in. We're looking for that car because we believe through our investigation that that car was in the area during the time of the murders. And we also believe that the occupant or occupants may have seen something. They may not know they have seen something. So we specifically want to talk to them, and we want to know who they are and what they might know or might be able to contribute to the investigation. Over the weekend, investigators have sorted through and prioritized numerous tips. Some are tips that came in earlier and we've been working on. Other tips are new and are relevant. It's overwhelming sometimes with the amount of information that comes in on these tip lines. So our analysts have spent hours sorting through and trying to come up with the most relevant tips first for the investigators to follow up on. They have re-interviewed some of the folks we've interviewed earlier in this investigation to clarify information. Sometimes when new information comes forward, the people that we've spoken to beforehand may have new insight on that. So it does often seem like we're backtracking, but we're really just trying to get the most important details and the best timeline that we can come up with. We have literally an army of analysts who have been sorting through videos that have been submitted through the FBI.gov Moscow upload site. Those videos are from all over town, the gas stations, and specifically the area around King Road. We've been trying to use those videos to garner new information. As you can imagine, there's hours and hours and hours of videos, so it does take a lot of time. I want to talk a minute about safety. There's been a lot of speculation about what is the safety to the public right now, or the risk to the public right now. I would just like to add that we should always be vigilant. Certainly we should be vigilant now, but we should make that a way of life for us. We should always be walking with our head up, sticking to lighted paths, and walking in groups if we can. And in addition, letting people know when you've arrived home if you have not made prior arrangements. This is not an indication of a specific elevated risk, but something that we should be vigilant with just in our daily lives. I want to let everybody know that we are still 100% committed to solving this crime. There's a lot of information to sort through, and the information keeps coming in. And not all of the information is relevant, but you don't know if a tip is valid until you take the time to examine that tip and see how it relates to other information that you might have. We have teams in Moscow, Salt Lake City, and in Virginia, as well as other locations across the country. And we're prepared to do interviews and follow up on information at any point, anywhere. The ISP and FBI investigators, along with the Moscow Police Department investigators, includes dozens of analysts, tip line operators, and others, and they're working around the clock 7 days a week to sort through the volumes of information. MPD has detectives, support personnel, and a communications team to try to keep everything together, but it is still a daunting task. The FBI, their investigators are ready at a moment's notice at any place in the country to go conduct an interview should the tips and leads take us there. And the Idaho State Police has, besides working on the investigation, had several uniformed troopers in the area to help with safety concerns around the city and on the University of Idaho campus. And just a quick reminder, please stick to official news releases for information. Tracking down rumors and quelling rumors about specific individuals or specific events that may or may not have happened is a huge distraction for investigators, and oftentimes is the result of social media propagation, and it is very, very frustrating to investigators and hard to stay on track. Finally, I just want to add that we do have a lot of information, and we are specifically keeping that information safe. We're not releasing specific details because we do not want to compromise this investigation. It's what we must do. We owe that to the families, and we owe that to the victims. We want more than just an arrest. We want a conviction. We owe that justice to Xana, Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan. And finally, I would just like to remind anybody with information, you can call the tip line at 208-883-7180. And that is directly to the tip line office in the FBI. There's been some frustration about having to wade through the tip line, but remember, this is not the only investigation in the country. So please be patient. We want that information. Anything could break this open for us. And then also the email tip line is tipline@ci.moscow.id.us. Thank you for your continued patience in this investigation.
You're just watching there out of Moscow, Idaho, and the ongoing unsolved case that is taking place. That was the captain there in Idaho as they are sorting through tips, and they said they got a lot of tips. The most recent information we had was they're providing stock images of a car, a white car that they were looking for. Elantra there from 2011 to 2013. They're asking to talk to the driver or the passengers within that car that was potentially around King Street in this November 13th, the early morning hours, as police believe that these 4 University of Idaho students were murdered between 3 and 4 a.m. Of course, they are continuing to try to look into possible suspect or suspects. And of course, you also heard there at the end that they don't want just to solve this case. They want a conviction in this case. That's why they say they are working so closely with all the evidence to make sure that they can examine it, and all the tips and all the video they're gathering and hearing from different members there in the community as they're still working to determine who killed the 4 college students, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee Gonsalves, and Madison Mogan, while they were sleeping in their off-campus home on November 13th.
Groceries, gas.
Whoops, sorry about that. All right, everybody, that's Fox with that information. Once again, that was Captain Lanier giving his commentary about rumors, rhetoric. Their focus is on solving this crime. Be aware of your safety, your surroundings. Walking in lighted areas, walking in groups, Walk with your head up. A lot of information is coming in. They are going over videos in the general area, tips. And know that this is not the only investigation that they're working on naturally in the state of Idaho, those working in the state lab and those processing information. Someone in the chat is talking about my virtual video. Let me go in and check to see what is going on with that. If it has a copyright claim on it. Let me see. If not, I'll just tell you where to go to view it yourself. Hold on 1 minute. Well, I'm pulling it up and it shows me moving my finger on the screen, so there's no problem with it. I uploaded this 2 hours ago. 1122 King Road, a virtual tour of the home. I haven't seen any type of issues with it. Even if it's a copyright, it won't affect the channel. And so far, I don't see anything in here. It's 724. I don't see anything in pertaining to that, so I'm good. 1 second. It's in there because I just looked at it. I didn't monetize it though. Let me see how that's going to, let me check everything out here. Yeah, I just went through it. So it's showing. All right, please check out the library for that tour of that said video of the house. Naturally, may not look the same, but it just gives you a general idea of what the house looks like. Please check out my community page for the said information of uploads, polls to take. This is a very diabolical case, and I've played you different commentary by News Nation. The Dr. Phil show at the beginning of this live stream, he has a segment on the killings of these kids, and he has a panel up there giving their assertions of the case. One woman, she's I believe a writer for the Daily Mail, and a psychologist or psychoanalyst is on his panel. That video is also in the YouTube queue, and it's also in splits of a video. I just so happen to find it on a full video off someone else's network. I do not know where this case is going. I do not know the relevance of the white Elantra, if it is of value to the case, but the fact that they keep talking about it, perhaps it is. Did it have one or more occupants inside of the car on the night that the tip came in? I do not know. When did the tip come in? Did they already know about the tip weeks ago, or they're just now relaying that tip to the public as it came in? I do not know. Who's the perpetrator? I do not know. Did the kids give the code out to the front door on the keypad? I do not know. How did the perpetrator enter? That's why you need to look at that virtual tour so you can get a general idea of if indeed he came through the second glass slider. One of the windows, one window sits above the sink and one is to the right. That would be the right-hand side coming in through that door of the glass door. There is a video through News Nation where there is a screen lying on the ground. Please listen to what I'm saying. There is a picture of a screen lying on the ground, which looks like it would go to that window on the second level on the right side of the slider. Did the perpetrator take that screen off to climb through the window? If he could not get through the second floor slider or the window above the kitchen sink on the second floor. Very pivotal information, and I'm surprised nobody has mentioned that, but Queen caught that during a News Nation video. There is a screen lying on the ground in a still shot and a video of that second floor landing, second entry. So did the perpetrator pull that screen off? Because nobody's talking about that, but I saw that. And I'm so shocked as many people following this story. I haven't heard of anybody mentioning the screen. So if this is your first time hearing it, you heard it here on Everyday Shenanigans. There is a still shot of the back of the house with a screen lying on the ground, and I caught it off of one of News Nation's videos where they were panning the house. This could be a very serious clue to how the perpetrator got in, because many people are speculating the glass door. What if indeed the girls did lock the door, but didn't lock a window? Who all had access to this house and the code to the front door keypad? When you go on my virtual tour, the virtual tour that I'm showing, when you go inside of the house, to the left of the entry are the stairs to go upstairs to the second floor. You will see a keypad on the wall, which would look like a security pad. Please go check that video out in my library queue. Thank you so much for joining me. If you see something, say something. Be a part of the solution and not the problem. Mind the children. Know that one phone call could save a life. Thank you all so much for following everything so much pertaining to this network. Welcome all new subscribers, viewers. If you have not subscribed to this great network, please do like, share, subscribe to other platforms. Please follow Jennifer Coffindeffer on her Twitter account, because she has a lot of information to true crime and also this crime here, and many updates she posts daily to her Twitter account. If you want to see a Christmas movie starring the Queen, Mountain Magic Christmas, starring Dolly Parton, Willie Nelson, is airing on NBC and Peacock. The Queen is in the opening scene of the movie. 2 shots of the Queen. Thank you so much for your support. I'm going to check with Coffindeffer to see what she has posted, and then I'm going to check out of here. Thank you all so much for watching this live stream, 2 hours plus thus far. Sorry so long, but I wanted to get all those posts out pertaining to this case. Let's see what some of the people are talking about on Twitter right now. Ooh, it's a lot. Too much, too much, too much. And please follow the Queen on Twitter if you like. Everyday Shenan 1. Thank you so much. Oh, let me see. I ain't used to all this stuff. 2 hours ago, Jennifer posted, look for case to keep advancing as returns keep pouring in and car tips lead to more evidence. Hang in there, Ellie. I know what you're doing and your exhaustive efforts. Hashtag Idaho students. Hashtag Idaho homicide. Hashtag Idaho student suspect. Hashtag Idaho University. And now Fox News has released information. Cops take hours of video from gas station. Let's see what that information is talking about. Hold on, you guys. May have to bring another update. Cops take hours of video from gas station after clerk spots white car on night of stabbings. Okay, let's read that. Detectives collected 8 hours of surveillance video Tuesday morning from a gas station in Moscow where a clerk saw a white sedan passing at about 3:45 on the night of the unsolved stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students, according to store workers. An overnight assistant manager told Fox News Digital that she'd been reviewing the tapes a little bit at a time over the past few days, looking for clues in her downtime on the graveyard shift. She said she was not working on the night of the murders. Monday night, she said she reached the 3 o'clock hour and spotted the car. She said she took a picture of the screen and sent it in to an email address police set up to receive tips. I had a weird feeling to go get on the camera, she said, asking that her name not be publicized out of the safety concerns as the suspect remains at large. So here you will see a picture of a white car going by. I'm assuming it's a car. And this is around 3:45 a.m. on November 13th. And this is from a security footage and on a computer screen, and the clerk has taken a picture of it with her phone. The car drove by real quick, she said, and turned down a side street off Highway 8. Last week, police said they were looking to speak with the occupants of a white Hyundai Elantra who may have information on the slayings pertaining to the victims. The 3 women lived together at the home, and Chapin, who was dating Cornotto, spent the night over. police have said they believe anyone in the Elantra may have critical information to share in the case. Investigators arrived Tuesday morning around 11 a.m. and collected the video. The store manager said that the officers identified themselves as state detectives and took a whole shift's worth of video. Asked if they found anything substantial as they left the building, one responded, hold on a minute. Got so much. Not yet. Police say a white 2011-2013 Hyundai Elantra was seen near the victim's home around the time of the slaying. So very interesting information. So now that's two different sources of information. A white Elantra near the victim's home, and now that car going by this gas station. Very interesting. The detectives went directly to the police station after leaving the gas station, and it was too soon for investigators to comment on the contents of the video. Robbie Johnson, a police spokeswoman, said police continue to seek help from the public, but said she could not immediately confirm whether the car on the gas station's video was the same Elantra. If you saw anything that night that looked strange, anything you have to report, even if you don't think it's anything, we're still encouraging people to send that in, she said. When we get that information, even if it's small, sometimes it can piece together the timeline, put those puzzle pieces together, and we get a greater, bigger picture of what was going on. No suspects have been publicly identified or taken into custody. The tip line where you can send in your information is 208-883-7180 or by email to tipline, all lowercase letters, at ci.moscow.id.us. Digital media can be submitted at lowercase fbi.gov/Moscow, Idaho. Thank you all so much for that information. FoxNews.com is the source. Do not know if this is the same car. Let me make that clear during this live stream. That was seen going by on video surveillance at a gas station. What is the proximity of the gas station from the house? Is this the same car? Who was in the car? And who gave the information of an Elantra near the crime scene? Where did they park the car? On that drive to the right of the house where those apartments sit? Down the street? Round the corner? How long was the car there? Who turned in the tip? And what was so suspicious about the car? Did somebody have a doorbell camera to show who went in and got out of the car? Stay woke. Thank you for joining me, everybody, and following the content. God bless all of you. Happy holidays. Be aware of your surroundings and shopping. Take someone with you if you're going late night. Carry a crossover bag. Do not leave anything in the car outside to show what you've bought. Do not post to social media. Do not let strangers in your house. Do not meet people in strange places to buy any type of items. Meet them at the police station, well-lit areas. This is Everyday Shenanigans. Thank you for joining me.